Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year, and welcome to our first meeting of Finance and Admin for the 2022 year. Kind of a shame that we're back on Zoom, but it's still nice to see everybody. With that, it is 9:31, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. As we gather this morning, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. And with that, Connie, has a roll call been taken?
Through you, Chair, to committee, yes, roll call has been taken.
Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, can I get an adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting held on November 10th, 2021, please? Moved by Councillor Hunt, second by Councillor Brose. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, committee. And with that, I will, we don't have any delegations, so Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to committee. The first item in the admin report is the 2022 election, and there's an information item just to let committee know that Rose has been out contacting the local municipalities about the election planned for this fall. October 24th is the municipal election, and that the new council will take place or take office as of November 15th. So we're out seeking verification as to when elected officials will be sworn in at the local municipalities so we can better plan for the inaugural session. This is a bit of a change in terms of timing from past elections. And what we want to ensure is that we expedite the process so that we are not in a position where we have delegated authority or have to look at those things for a very long time. We have a governing body in place sooner than later. So we want to make sure that we're coordinating the swearing in with the local municipalities. So that is a flag for your information and of particular concern to us at the county, just because we're following the local municipalities and really need to have them get their councils in place so we can have, again, that governing body in place as soon as possible following the election. Thank you for that, Chair. The second item is the request for donations to Festival Hall. Typically, those requests are coming to the local municipality. So I know there's a donation from the town of Petawawa. There's a donation from Laurentian Valley, I believe, and then the city of Pembroke contributes as well. It is there as information and a reminder that the county of Renfrew does practice or follow resolution FACC 01-0487, the no grants policy. So we just have provided it as information. Moving to item number 3, and Chair, with your indulgence, I will ask each director to speak to their respective sections on this one. I will start the conversation by just thanking the senior leadership team for the tremendous job they're doing and keeping our continuity of operations ongoing and dealing with situations as they arise. There was a flurry of activity over the holidays where we, to be frank, we have not been completely consistent with some of our policy. We are, Michael talked a little bit about that when he gets to his, but we have had to make some moves just to make sure that we've had adequate staffing in place. And I think we've achieved the ultimate goal, and that is keeping the residents of the county of Renfrew safe and the residents of our long-term care facilities as well. So whether it's community services, whether it's long-term care or emergency services, every department has stepped up in some way to flex and address concerns as they come up. And hats off to our HR folks who are dealing with our many staffing challenges within the organization. So, our health coordinators dealing with staff being off and providing that guidance as well. In fact, my example last night, I started to come down with a head cold. I reported it to our HR folks, and they're back immediately to me with some direction as a staff member, providing me the keep going, work from home, and, do what you need to do. So great response we have in place to any health issues that are occurring within the organization. And we've had at the admin level and public works, we've had, and like you have at the local municipality, many staff off these days. So with that, Chair, if I may, I will turn it over to Mike Blackmore, who is first in the report, and he will provide us, I hope, with even more up-to-date information than is contained in today's report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Through you, Chair Murphy. Good morning to you and committee. Just before giving what you see in front of you, I do have a bit of an update with regard to some of the stats. So specific to staffing at both county homes, we're now tracking 11 staff at Miramichi Lodge and 18 at Bonarshire Manor who are currently isolating, awaiting PCR results as a result of being symptomatic or a high-risk contact case. Over the period of the holidays, we did see a significant number of staff come off of isolation. And thankfully, we're starting to see those PCR results that we're reliant upon to return people to work. They're starting to come back a little quicker. I mean, we were well in excess of 7 days at one point, but we're starting to see them turn around within a matter of a few days at present. So hopefully that keeps up. Staffing pressures. So, I mean, it's a bit of a mix at both homes. It's a mix of was consistent pre-Omicron and with the odd spike on any given day where we could see as many as 4 to 6 PSWs on a shift at either home, not present. So there are some things that we put into place to help mitigate that in advance, including some pre-holiday season staffing up. So we had received some funding from the province to bolster our PSW and RPN staffing going into the new year. So we got a jump on that and started doing a little bit of advance recruiting to basically increase our numbers so that when someone does call in, that first call in, we're reverting back to where we would have been. And anyway, putting a bit of a cushion in place. We utilized the newly created resident aid position. That's something that didn't exist pre-COVID. Bonarshire Manor is using that position particularly well. We're adopting an all hands on deck approach, shifting our duties to more of in those times where we're short, where the basic care becomes the priority versus any admin type functions you might engage in. As is typical, we have RNs doing things like something that's called our MDS. Basically, it's our charting that gets tied to our funding. And yeah, it's not ideal to let that go for too long, but in the event that we're short, the basic care becomes the priority. We catch up on that stuff later. And the various other administrative type duties take a backseat to the actual frontline care. Of course, we continue to encourage placements with Algonquin College for students for RN, RPN, and PSW. So we continue to keep those rolling as well, including more recently, I think it's the third iteration for the living classroom at Bonarshire Manor. We've got students lined up ready to go for that as well into January. We did engage human resources from other departments within the county as well. So thank you to Orwell Rapine for coordinating childcare services to assist us with coordinating the screener role. And we're calling on Laura again, coming into a few weeks. We've got a few spots to fill that Laura's helping us out with as well. And more recently, so there's been some restrictions with regard to who can come into long-term care. So visitors are no longer allowed to come in, but essential caregivers are. So we're taking this opportunity to pull our essential caregivers, to see what it is that they're willing to do when it comes to providing care or what they can do. So we're creating a bit of an inventory there in the event we have to pull the trigger on actual, more some of those physical care requirement needs versus, essential caregivers also play a role with coming in and socializing or enhancing the psychological well-being of the resident. So that's really important, but we're also looking for that. Okay, which of these essential caregivers are able to help with actual physical care as well? So we've not reached the point of what's called crisis staffing, and I realize it's kind of a moving target as to what that is. To me, it's something. When you've reached crisis staffing, that means you're no longer able to provide the very basic of care. And in the event we did get to that point, the province has made some contingencies with regard to the ability to return staff to work earlier than what is typical. So what is typical now is the staff member that's a high-risk contact or is symptomatic, you're looking at a 10-day isolation period. What's called a test to work process or protocol enables a home to engage in returning someone to work, back to work with a day 6 negative rapid antigen test and a day 7 negative rapid antigen test. On that day 7, they could return to work following resolve of symptoms. So that's the preferred is still the 10-day isolation in terms of the more cautious approach, and that's still the approach we're using presently. And we've been managing thus far, and we hope to continue to do so. Just if I could add, if we ever did have to go to that day 6 and day 7 protocol, there's some additional precautions that we would have to take with regard to more stringent personal protective equipment requirements in that person that has returned to work at day 7 would be required to wear a fit tested N95 mask and would also be required to work self-isolate and isolate at home. And any individual around that worker would also be required to wear a fit tested N95 mask. And on that front, both homes have been actively engaging in getting all of our staff fit tested for N95 mask, which is it's coming into place. It was a bit slow at the uptake because there was quite a lack of availability of certain types of masks, and the reality is that there's no one mask that fits everyone. We've got, I think, between 4 and 5 masks of different types right now that are being used for our staff, and we're down to within the 10s, 20s of staffs out of 200 that we're having yet to be tested. So we're close, and the supplies are starting to come in from the ministry as well. To date, neither home has had a COVID positive resident case, thankfully. And there has been, and so neither home has been an outbreak. And just to further clarify what that entails is there's been a bit of a revision in what constitutes an outbreak, and that a suspect outbreak is if either home were to have a what was before a PCR positive resident, but now also includes a rapid antigen tested positive resident, or 2 rapid antigen tested staff for which there's a correlation that their infection was born of either home versus in the community. And thus far, all the cases we've been tracking have been community-based, not based out of the home. Efforts also continue with regard to making sure that everyone's fully immunized. So you may be aware that the province identified by January 28th, all essential caregivers, staff, and volunteers and students must have received their 3rd dose of vaccine. So as of yesterday, we're running near 75% at the lodge, and I think it was 70 when I last checked at the matter. I know there's been subsequent clinics since then, so I expect we're even higher. Staff are certainly aware that come 28th, those without the vaccine will not be able to work. And I expect all staff will get their vaccines. And yeah, just if I could also add, there was a number of precautions that came into play over the Christmas period. Actually, Renfrew County got a bit of a jump on this, and that the medical officer of health restricted residents from engaging in day absences or overnight absences. General visitors were restricted. And I mean, the timing was maybe not the greatest, and that it happened just prior to Christmas. So, I mean, there was some very disappointed families, but at the same time, I think most families recognized the importance of what it is that we're doing. And it was the province followed suit with a similar order coming on December 30th. And just if I could just add one more thing, just with regard to testing for people coming into the building, the provincial mandate is twice weekly rapid antigen tests, and both Mayor Michelage and Bon Street Manor were fortunate enough to secure sufficient rapid antigen tests to test daily. And we think that's been very important in keeping the virus at bay. Testing daily, I think, has been really good, and we've been doing it for probably over a month now. We plan to keep on doing it as long as we can. I think those are the highlights.
That's great. Thank you so much for that update. I think what I'm going to do is I'll take questions as we go along because the information is fresh. So does anybody have any questions, concerns for Mr. Blackmore in our long-term care? All right, so I guess your update was really good, Mike. I will say what I said yesterday at Health Committee. I think our long-term care staff deserve huge kudos, considering that almost now 50% of long-term care homes in the province of Ontario are in outbreak, and our 2 homes are not. So congratulations again. I think all of across the board, our staff are doing an amazing job, but I know that long-term care has been really contentious. All right, so, go ahead, Paul.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just to Mike's credit and the credit of his staff, they make it sound easy, but we had a number of calls over the holidays where we weren't sure how things were going to work out. And, I'm happy that Mike and his team have put other provisions in place. So, we were as far as having conversations with Chief Nolan's staff and talking about, okay, if we need to, can we bring paramedics in to provide some support? We went back and HR has compiled a list of our retired employees. So we have access to that. We've also, Mike's had previous conversations with contractors like Bayshore Health and others. So if we needed to contract, so we have those provisions and those contingencies in place, because I don't think we're through this yet with our staffing complement. And so should we get to that critical point, as Mike explains, we have some provisions in place. So hats off to Mike and his team. I just wanted to let committee know that we have other contingencies in place. And we're kind of right on the bubble here where, if we lose 1 or 2 more staff, then we're going to start to go into that list and see where we can find other resources. So with that, Chair, I'll turn it over to Chief Nolan, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Great.
On to the next mic.
Thank you, Paul. And of course, Madam Chair, through you to Finance and Admin Committee. I'm going to run through what is our 20-odd point plan for you, but I'll try and be more illustrative than narrative on this one. I think that, from a context perspective, the health system is in dire straits right now. So everybody is trying to help in every way that they can. And as Paul just described, as a paramedic service, we're trying to backstop our partners. We do have some nimbleness. We do have some capacity. We do have a health human resource advantage over most others in the healthcare system. We have, in our last hiring, we remain to have over 70 available qualified staff on that application process. So we're continuing to work through that, weed through that, understand what the needs are in terms of our what's become quite a diversified approach to supporting the healthcare system. And that's in all of our partnerships. So I think that, given the amazing work that the frontline staff have done and the management team have done, because we have trusting relationships and because we have a good understanding of the pressure points within the system, we're trying to be nimble and support our partners wherever we can. And as altruistic as that sounds, it's also quite self-serving in that, where our partners succeed, we succeed, and where our partners fail, we fail. And ultimately, the ones that have the greatest consequence to that are your residents, our patients, and the people that are using the healthcare system. So I just want to provide that as a little bit of context. We're not running around like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts just trying to fix everybody else's problem. We're trying to make sure that the system's working so that it doesn't backlog onto us as a municipal paramedic service, but most importantly, that no patient is left in the lurch as a result of crumbling infrastructure around us, particularly on the health human resource side. So when we look at that and we look at the report on page 5, certainly staffing has been an ebb and flow from the original VTAC model through to swabbing, which is changes like the weather in terms of provincial policy. And, one day we have lineups around the block and the next day, we're waiting for people to show up. So we need to continue to be nimble and flex not only our capacity, but also our service delivery models. You'll remember at one time we did a lot of congregate care and a lot of pop-up work in that space. More recently, now we're doing drive-through and some targeted interventions. And I read Minister Lecce's article last night where he says that we will now be providing vaccination clinics in schools across Ontario. So we'll see what comes to bear in that regard, but it's certainly something from our perspective, the tail is very much wagging the dog on this one, and we need to be very careful as to how we respond and how, in some ways, we can chase our own tail if we blink every time the province blinks. So we need to have a little bit of measure in terms of how we're addressing these things because they're changing so quickly. That being said, business as usual in terms of 911 service delivery and remote access. We had another remote access call over the weekend in a remote part of the county for 2 people that went through the ice on an ATV, for example. And at the same time, the 911 calls are busier than ever, take longer than ever because of the infectious disease requirements, and are more complex and more severe than ever. So we need to just acknowledge that those things are going on and that those staff are doing an incredible job, very quietly, very diligently, but that work obviously is one of the backbones of the service and something that we can't forget about when we look at issues of offload delay and patient flow and some of the strategies that we're putting in place to try and support that critical piece of our infrastructure. When we look at transfer of care and patient flow, there are a number of opportunities that have long been available to us. But looking at where people have been accepting of change and where we are most appropriately placed within the health system. So we know right now that when we go into Ottawa, we can expect something between a 4 and 11 hour delay, losing our resources to standing in the hallways waiting to transfer care in those hospitals. Patently unacceptable. You see it in the Ottawa media related to the Ottawa paramedic service, and of course it affects them to a greater proportion than it does us. But when I lose 10% of my fleet, 20% of my fleet of paramedics sitting in hallways in hospitals in Ottawa, that's absolutely unacceptable, knowing that they're no longer available for emergency response here in the county. We've certainly seen some delays and some pressures within our hospitals for various reasons. So we have, dating back to last January, been supporting our hospitals by providing paramedic staff in those hospitals to decant any crisis or surge capacity requirements, thus liberating our staff back out into the field. Last January, Committee and Council approved an agreement with the Pembroke Regional Hospital to do this, you may recall. And over the Christmas holidays, we had occasion that as a result of a number of factors, not the least of which their per hospital IT system was shut down for an attack. And secondly, from a staffing and patient volume perspective, they requested to go on what we call bypass, meaning that paramedics would no longer be bringing most patients to that hospital. They requested some assistance from us. And based upon the principles of the previous Pembroke Hospital agreement, we needed to make a quick decision to support them with staffing in triage and patient flow in the emergency department. That practice has continued, has actually shown to be very successful in terms of liberating ambulances and paramedics, as well as supporting their health human resource issues within the Renfrew Hospital. So that practice has continued. At the direction of our chair, we'll be bringing forward that for bylaw at the next health committee, but I just wanted to make sure everybody understood the context that we were doing that. And as discussed yesterday at health, that is 100% funded by the ministry vis-a-vis the hospital for those functions in Emerge. You'll hear a lot about offload delay in the media provincially. Many other municipalities have followed suit in terms of strategies to mitigate any offload or any patient flow issues within their hospitals. And I understand that today or tomorrow, the Assistant Deputy Minister will be coming down with a memo encouraging these practices that we began last January in terms of supporting transfer of care, offload delay, triage, patient flow. So I just want to make sure that Finance Committee is aware of that we have begun that practice. We do have a contract and an indemnity agreement with the Empire Hospital, and it is 100% funded. That information was all provided within the Health Committee report yesterday, and we will be coming forward with a bylaw, but just recognize that this happened literally on Christmas Eve and needed to be acted upon. So we follow the principles of the previous agreement with PRH. Different hospitals have different pressures at different times, and I think that that's important when we look at being able to support these activities. We know, for example, in Barry's Bay, they were short-staffed physician coverage, so asked that an advanced care paramedic be available to escort any patient that was critical in nature because they simply couldn't afford to send a physician on a transfer over the holiday period. So there's a lot going on in the background. There's pressures that we've not seen before. But just, rest assured that we are doing everything we can to prevent any distraction from providing 911 service, providing community paramedic prevention functions, and continuing the work of swabbing and vaccination. But knowing that that patient's journey and that patient's flow is critically important to our ability to serve and protect the 911 resources we have in the county, we've flexed using some different employees in different roles to be able to accommodate that. When we look at page 6, Madam Chair, certainly the work is continuing with RCBTAC, an absolutely critical function within our matrix of solutions that we're putting forward. And I think it's important that we look at it truly as a matrix because there's no one thing that we can do that's going to relieve the pressure or the burden that we're experiencing today. But I believe strongly that creating that matrix and having a number of different solutions working in support of one another in harmony, that allows us to be able to actually make a significant difference because they are all synergistic by design. Where we apply rules to dispatch and to our deployment functions has a direct relationship to our ability to maintain coverage within the community, where we use community paramedics and others to first respond and leverage the opportunities, as you'll see in number 8, around auxiliary medical directives. Our goal is to keep people at home as long as possible and ultimately be able to not obligate them going to the emergency department. So we've established a care pathway with our partners at the Base Hospital Program, or RPPEO, Regional Paramedic Program of Eastern Ontario, so that paramedics have the policy cover and the provincial support to be able to treat people in their own homes, leave them in their own homes, and then do a referral either to VTAC as a primary care follow-up or to community paramedicine for a follow-up as well. This is quite avant-garde from an Ontario perspective. It's been happening for many years in other provinces, but by creating the policy framework and the linkages between these programs, we're able to safely care for people and ultimately keep them in their own home where they want to be and avoid further congesting the emergency departments and the balance of the healthcare system by simply taking them to the hospital, because that's what we've always done. Many people are happy to be treated in the home, to do a consultation with a paramedic and a physician, either at the paramedic program or within VTAC, and be able to get the medications they need, get the referral they need, and then navigate the health system in a way that makes sense for them and the health system. This has never been done before. We've always just kind of taken people and dumped them into the health system and left them in the bullpen of the emergency department in hopes that from there, they're able to navigate the system in a timely and expeditious way. That's not always the case, because the choke point within the health system has always been the emergency department. That's the catch-all, as some hospital CEOs would say. It is, truly the front door. But the problem is the back door of that same system is broken. When people get admitted to the floors, they go into ALC or alternate level of care, and they're not able to be placed back into the community safely because of challenges within the home and community care space or availability of staff, or they get onto a wait list for long-term care. So I won't bore you with the other strategies in terms of the community paramedic and long-term care program or the high intensity supports program supporting ALC discharge from hospital. We're already doing those things, but those things are happening in synchronicity, if you will, with the rest of these solutions that we've been able to implement as part of our continuity of operations plan. The resurgence or the upsurgence of Omicron has certainly caught people's attention to the point that they're now willing to accept other solutions to a system that has often been guarded in terms of its ability to be nimble and responsive to crisis. People have become more accepting of change and that change is necessary to be able to not only demonstrate, but also respond to the challenges that are before us. So many of the policy solutions that I presented in our 20-odd point plan are specific to the crisis of the day, but are a solution to the everyday problems that you've heard from me for over a decade within the paramedic service. So I'm very, very pleased to say that we're now exercising many of the ideas that staff have brought forward to be able to make the system better. Our goal is to demonstrate in very short order that they have made the system better, and eventually that they should not be going away just because Omicron or COVID or the pandemic goes away. We want to institutionalize many of these practices where they make sense, and where they don't make sense, we're more than happy to bid them adieu and move on in terms of our practice. When we look at our partnership with the dispatch center, we have changed our deployment plan since Christmas, respecting that interfacility transfers do need to occur, but they should not be occurring at the expense of the availability of paramedic services to the community for 911 calls. So there's a fine line and a balance within policy to be able to achieve that. We're continuing to work with dispatch in terms of revising our deployment plan so that the transfers can happen. They just might happen based upon our availability over the perceived urgency of the hospital. A patient in care in hospital is safer than somebody who's sitting on the couch at home with no one responding to their 911 call. And as you've seen in Toronto and Ottawa and other centers, that's become a reality. When you have paramedics responding from Gananoque to the market in Ottawa, you know that there's a significant problem. There isn't a week that goes by that we're not asked to respond from somewhere in the county to somewhere in downtown Ottawa. That's a big problem for us. So those deployment plan changes are about protecting our resources and also making sure that we don't end up in the same problem that some of our neighbors have in terms of availability of resources. I want to be clear with this committee. There are occasions when we have no paramedic coverage for Renfrew County. 0 ambulances available for our entire population and the 10,000 odd square kilometers of our coverage area. That keeps us up at night. We are doing full court press with our emergency response vehicles and our community paramedics as part of that surge capacity. Paramedics are liberating themselves as quickly as possible, but we also need to be available to our hospital partners to ensure that transfer of care and that flow happens in an efficient way. And given the health human resource situation that we find ourselves, we're able to be nimble and to support some of those needs. We're in discussions with all of the hospitals in terms of what their needs are, what their capacity is, so that nobody's surprised when somebody goes on bypass or has major staffing issues that may implicate the paramedic service and our patients. In terms of internal policies, certainly we're working on the vaccination component. There was a question yesterday about how many paramedics we have that are not vaccinated. My understanding at last count is that we have 4 that have chosen not to be vaccinated and do choose to do the screening swabbing and have done the training associated with that. Despite our education and outreach, the facts of the matter are that both the provincial and corporate policies do not mandate or obligate paramedics to be vaccinated. And I see that as a risk, frankly. But unfortunately, we don't have the same policy cover to be able to mandate in the same way that other sectors do. So just be aware that we do have a number of staff that have chosen to not be vaccinated. And to be clear, those are not medical exemptions, those are by choice. When we look at N95, certainly the availability of stock continues to be strained, and no different than Mr. Blackmore. We're going through the process of refit testing. Every time 3M changes a model number on a mask, you have to retest the entire workforce to be able to meet that new model number. And of course, they just changed all their model numbers. As well, when we look at our logistics, certainly we've been bringing in rapid antigen tests. We continue to work with the province, and we had a bit of hope yesterday around our ID Now PCR machines, which we ordered, closer to Christmas, closer to Halloween than it was Christmas. And we've been pushing again very hard on that to make sure that we have the availability of a 15-minute turnaround for PCR tests. We know that not everybody needs a PCR test anymore, but those that do need an answer quickly. So the province is providing at no cost to the municipality PCR tests and the kits that go with them. We just had to apply some extra special pressure yesterday to be able to get those moving, and it sounds like they are. And in terms of overall pressures, I think, we're trying to be very practical in terms of the solutions we have. We know that there's an increased burden from an administrative perspective, given all the policy work and everything else that we've done. But at the same time, we do have a multi-pronged approach. As desperate as all of this sounds, we're in much better shape than many of our contemporaries across the province. And I think in part because we've got spectacular staff who are very committed to this community. And we've also taken a multi-pronged approach to supporting our patients ultimately by creating different solutions. Some might say, why are you doing this? It's not your problem, it's the hospital's problem. That's a common refrain in the health system, or it's home and community care's problem, or it's long-term care's problem. We have always taken the approach that we're here to advocate for our patients, and that it is ultimately, if it is our patient's problem, it's our problem too. So we need to find solutions. And I can say that the level of collaboration is being reciprocated by everybody within the health sector right now. The level of collaboration is higher than I've ever seen it, as desperate as it may be. But at the same time, people are contributing in different ways and within their capacity. We happen to have particular capacity in certain areas, which is causing us work, obviously. But at the end of the day, it's also getting people swabbed faster, vaccinated more quickly, and closer to home. It's protecting our most vulnerable population from a community paramedic perspective. It's providing response within the community and retaining and protecting that 911 resource wherever possible, and supporting our downstream partners in hospital to be able to ensure patient flow and that we are not being implicated in that regard within our local hospitals. So we remain open to working with all of them and making sure that they understand our challenges as much as we understand theirs. So that's really the summary for you, Madam Chair, that I've outlined on page 8. The last piece that I'd like to say is, a huge thank you to all of my staff and your staff for continuing to, see the light of day and recognize that as challenging as the last 22, 23 months have been, they have been exceptional in coming to work, but putting their best foot forward, to treating their patients with compassion and dignity, and trying out some new ideas to be able to support our patients and the health system overall. VTAC is a shining example of where something we never thought possible. We now have 24/7 access to primary care in Renfrew County for even the 30% of our population that doesn't even have a family doctor. That is extraordinary, and something that the warden and all of council need to be congratulated on supporting. And our commitment is to continue that work and where possible be able to entrench it as a day-to-day business within Renfrew County, because we know that physician recruitment has been an issue for a very long time. We've been able to solve the fact that people can now reach out to VTAC as opposed to calling 911 or going to the emergency departments. So you can see full circle how that's good for all of us. So big thank you to staff, big thank you to council for your support, and for the Finance and Admin Committee for listening to this lengthy continuity of operations. But I think it's an important context for you to understand, given the speed and the nature in which we're working.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chief. And very well said. Your staff have just been incredible. Obviously, we have the paramedic base in Eganville entrenched in our municipal building. So I see some of your staff on, certain occasions. And I know that I'm sure that morale across the board has been tough, but everybody I've spoken to seems to be on board with anything and everything that they can do. So kudos to you and your staff. Did anybody have any questions on paramedic service? Councillor Brose, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Chief Nolan. I noticed in your report that you're on a recruitment drive as well to fill some of the vacancies in your department. Is that still a challenge, or have you been successful in filling the positions that are vacant?
Yeah, thank you through Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Brose. So as I'd remarked, we have about 70 applicants that are effectively job ready from our last posting. So Deputy Chief Grenier and Commander Libby are working through that list actually this week to refresh it, to confirm availability and identify the most appropriate staff to be able to bring in. It's an ongoing challenge in a number of respects. One is trying to right size our workforce to our demand. And even on the 911 side, when we have a household outbreak, for example, or we have a number of staff that are required to quarantine for 5, 7, 10, 14 days, depending on the policy of the day, those cause, like it does for my partners in long-term care, momentary gasps of, do we have enough staff today? Are we down staffing? Are we up staffing? Are we shifting within the pool that we already have? And at the same time, we know that there are other people that could be brought in. But to find that sweet spot in terms of bringing in the right number of people so that ultimately we're not having to let them go, or we have staff that aren't maintaining availability or providing us the work, that's a constant struggle. It would be great to have a bullpen of an extra 100 staff and call them up when you need them. But there is a cost to onboarding them. There's a cost to maintaining them. And ultimately, the roles that we've now undertaken are also quite diverse. I could be speaking simply to paramedics, but we also have medical receptionists in our VTAC program. We have administrators and coordinators within our community paramedic functions, data analysts. And more recently, within the budget application, we also have the emergence of a role for an administrative commander to be able to support the sophistication of IT, finance, and human resources to be able to liberate my deputy chief to kind of keep an eye on, specific to your question, how do we optimize the staff we have? So we have what is extraordinary in the health system, that we have more applicants than we have jobs for right now. So how do we right size that, knowing what the hospital need, what the long-term care needs are? As Paul said, we got the call over the weekend to say, hey, if we need you, can we send you into long-term care? I'm attempting to do all of that without drawing down on our 911 availability and resources. But at the same time, putting more paramedics in emergency response vehicles that will not be doing hospital transfers, that will not be lost to the city of Ottawa and offload delay, that will not be lost to other administrative functions, is actually one of our key strategies. So you may hear that we're short an ambulance on nights, for example, or an ambulance on days in the county, but we may also be concurrently upstaffing in the emergency response vehicles to make sure that we're not losing those resources to other municipalities. And when you have an emergency response vehicle with a very capable paramedic on board, and now the policy levers through the auxiliary medical directives that I've talked about, and the availability of consulting a physician and consulting a physician through VTAC, that single response paramedic can more often than not be able to treat and release that patient at home and refer them to alternate services. That to me is an optimal model, recognizing that less than 20% of the calls that we go out on that begin with 911 end up coming back as an emergency to the hospital. So if we focus our efforts on single response as it relates to that 80% of the population that either can be treated and released at home, or be delayed or scheduled for follow-up or transport to an appointment, for example, then those are opportunities that are available to us immediately.
Thank you for that. Anything further for the chief? Seeing none. Is Laura? There she is. Thank you, chief. Good morning, Laura.
Good morning, and through you, Chair, to committee, I can give an update on the community services and how we're managing at this time and our continuity of operations. We have all of our 3 out of 4 offices currently open. Our Killaloe office is closed because the municipal building is closed to the public, but our staff still does go into that office and provide services in a remote way. There is a drop-off box and, of course, telephone and other methods to serve clients. But in our other 3 offices, we have what I would call very minimal staff serving the public. We've deployed most of our staff to work from home, and that's working very effectively. Our walk-in traffic is very light right now, and we are keeping an eye on what the traffic needs are so that we can be in a good place to respond. But all of our phones are being answered. Everybody is being served. We find that because we've been at this for a long time now, that many of our clients and residents that do approach us use a variety of methods. Some will call, some will write, some will email, and some will even text. So we have been using all those methods to communicate and ensure that the level of services are still being provided. As many of you know, our childcare department went into fast and furious mode to deploy emergency childcare, which will be wrapping up this week. And then they'll be transitioning back to regular childcare. So there's a lot of work going on with childcare services, and they're able to do this from home as well. In the Renfrew County housing, we continue to serve our tenants. We're still receiving rent. We're still, getting units ready and moving people in. So that service is not seeing any bump in the level of service. We have changed the work orders for custodians and maintenance. We do this when we are in this type of situation where we respond to all requests, but we have to prioritize and triage. So we're working on emergency work orders only right now. And all of the other work orders, which are items that are not considered urgent, are being delayed until our staff can respond more appropriately. We don't want staff entering people's units if it's not absolutely necessary. All of our staff are outfitted with appropriate masks and gear, and they are definitely reporting on a daily basis, in terms of their own level of health and wellness. I have to say thank you as well to the HR department for their incredibly quick and very detailed responses to our staff who are either encountering Omicron through their own contacts or through questions and answers through clients. They've been an incredible team to support us, and we really appreciate it. Short of that, it's business, not as usual, but business is still going on, and those in our community are being served, and we look forward to continuing to serve them. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And again, kudos to you and your staff. And I understand that you're helping out a lot with other departments. I love the collaboration. They say teamwork makes the dream work. So are there any questions in community services? Seeing none. That was a fast and furious report, Laura. Thank you for that. And I see Lee is on. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning, Madam Chair. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So thank you, Chair, through you to committee from Public Works and Engineering. So obviously, almost all our staff are working from home, the engineering staff. People do have to come in and out of the office occasionally. Obviously, we're doing drawings and tender packages and that sort of thing. So they are required to wear a mask in the building. They've been recommended to wear a double mask, which is the blue surgical mask. So we've been trying to do that. Our public works staff over the holidays, we took the very, very extremely unusual process of they actually work from home. The guys are separated completely. The supervisors call them in when necessary. So with that said, the bases are still manned by the patrol supervisors, and they deal with things as they come in. So for example, today, like winter operations are underway. So when the gentlemen do come into work, they're separated. So Thankfully, this has been working for us so far. We've had one gentleman who had tested positive, and of course he remained away for 7 days. So thankfully, it didn't infect anyone else. So right now, our operations are continuing, and we see doing this into the near future. So, but other than that, everything is running along quite well, and there's no issues with anyone here in the office yet, and no issues with anybody at the patrols. So with that, I open the questions.
Thank you, Lee. And it's a bloody miracle that everybody is still healthy. Like, when we see exactly, yes, knock wood.
Yeah.
Are there any questions for Public Works? I see none. Thank you for your report, Lee. And you guys stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll pass along the kind words.
All right. And over to you, Fossey, with Corporate Services.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Finance and Admin Committee. So at the direction of the CAO, we changed our model of service delivery as best as we can, and we're having as many staff as possible working from home in finance, HR, and IT. It's essentially a hybrid model. There are staff in the building at all times to support the ongoing business needs of the organization. We do have our front door is open. Our reception counter is available Monday to Friday, 8 to 4 for any walk-in traffic, serving the public, that sort of thing. So that's available. The only real difference is in our provincial offences court, and of course the Ministry of the Attorney General regulates what we do with our provincial offences court. And so that office is open and available to the public Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. And of course, all staff are following all of the current public health and employee health guidelines on masking and distancing and all those things. I should note that, courts continue, and I'll talk a little later in my report today about how few courts we actually have, but the courts are all virtual at this point in time. We have on our trial docket, our court docket, our very first trial in its absentia date, which is in March of this year, which would be an in-person appearance. We have not received any other direction from the ministry at this time. So that is currently on the calendar, and we'll provide updates as we get closer to that date regarding whether or not that will move forward as an in-person court session. But it is scheduled for March of this year. I think really that's it, Madam Chair. I'm here in the building today, and we're essentially working on a hybrid model. Thank you.
Thank you. Boy, everyone was a lot faster than the chief. That's great. I'm happy. What did Nigel would always give the minister that had the shortest answer a pen.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Jeff. And I hope that your staff are all feeling good and are okay with the hybrid model. I think that's definitely the way to go right now. And last but definitely not least, we're going to move to Craig and DNP.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations to Mr. Nolan for a fantastic sweatshirt. It obviously is what we all should wear today. So thank you very much. With that, Chair, I shall be hopefully the shortest. We are getting used to this, unfortunately, and most of our staff is now off-site. Over the last year and a bit, we've transitioned to a mobile workspace where everybody's been outfitted with laptops and has access to the technology. We require the VPNs and the digital files, especially in planning, which is highly collaborative. Planning has moved more to a digital-based solution where they have access to shared files now, and using things like a Dropbox scenario where files can be transferred amongst each other for feedback and comments. So that's working well. Forestry staff and trail staff are in and out of the office. They have the distinct ability of working remote and alone. So they are continuing to do that when possible. And administrative staff are in and out here when required. We do have very skeleton staff. As you know, I'm in the building today and have been managing those who have been infected and become sick quite well as they have dealt with Jeff's group in HR quite well and have stayed away. So economic development, of course, is still busy trying to develop and trying to work with our businesses to try to make things happen, as are the tourism group and the small business group. So things are working as we've become normal, and this is how we now operate. So with that, I'm very thankful, again, like my colleagues have suggested, to our staff for pivoting very successfully once again and in being resilient in these times. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. And I think pivoting is the word of the day. I think that all of us have had to pivot to make things work. My mother used to say, necessity is the mother of invention. And I feel like all of the SLT have made things work out of necessity. So kudos to all of you. Is there anything for Craig? Seeing none. So I'm going to go back now to information item number 1, the 2022 municipal election. And number 2, the request for donation. Councillor Doncaster. It's been 2 years, Glenn. You're on mute.
I know, I was trying to access the screen and I clicked the wrong button. Just a question, I'm not sure if anybody knows the status. I'm just wondering, does anybody know the status of Festival Hall? Like, who owns them? Is it a nonprofit corporation? Is it owned by the city? Blah, blah, blah. Does anybody know that status?
Question. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Chair, the answer is short. I'm not aware of the position. Unfortunately, Mayor Sweet would know that answer, but he is away at his municipal budget day today.
Thank you.
We can find that out. All right, anything further? And I think we've covered number 3, so the report as a whole. Seeing none, can I get a mover and seconder to accept the administration report? Moved by Councillor Hunt, second by Councillor Brose. All in favor? Thank you. And Glenn, Craig just put in the chat, you can read up on Festival Hall. And it is now 10:30, so before we go into the finance report, I think we're going to take 10 minutes. I think we're doing pretty well here this morning. So back at 10:40, please. And Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Jeff, take it away with your department report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So our report begins on page 15 of the package. Item number 1 under information is really CRA mileage rates, and on an annual basis, we have a look to see what the allowable maximums are for 2022. And I guess in recognition to some significant increases in fuel prices, the CRA has changed the maximum to 61 cents per kilometer for the first 5,000 and 55 cents above that. The old rates were 59 and 53, and so we will make that change accordingly. Item number 2, under information, we have attached as Appendix 1 a letter dated December the 6th from Prince Edward County expressing their concerns about some recent changes under Regulation 3011 that requires municipalities to take over and maintain pioneer or closed and also abandoned operating cemeteries when volunteers or owners can no longer manage them. Of course, Prince Edward County is a single tier and so deals with that issue directly. This does not impact the county of Renfrew. However, local municipalities where you have cemeteries in your own municipalities would be impacted. And so therefore, the warden asks that we include this information in today's package to ensure that this committee is aware of this issue. Item number 3, really provincial offenses, workload stats. And of course, we're now at the end of the year period. You'll see in 2021, 8,581 charges compared to last year. I believe that was our lowest year ever at only 7,971 charges. We're still below sort of that average of about 10,000 charges per year. However, certainly an increase from the 2020 period. Item number 4, then, specific to the closure of all provincial offences courts by the ministry. We provide for you the December updated numbers for our backlog in our POA court. You'll see that for the month of December, we had 6 court days originally scheduled, and we were provided with only 3 of those days. The total backlog in charges at 1,146 represents about 48 court days to clear that backlog. And at our current rate of about 3 court sittings per month, it would take us roughly 16 months to clear through that backlog. So looking back, from when we first began tracking this information in March, at about 13 months in the backlog, it kind of jumped to its highest at about 17. Last month, 16 and a half. And so we're still at 16 months as a backlog. And that's really just for your information. Item number 5, attached as Appendix 2, a letter that we received from the County of Hastings. They sent it to the Honorable Doug Downey, the Attorney General, and the Honorable Peter Bethenfalvey, Ministry of Finance. County of Hastings really expressing their concern over dramatic increases in the insurance premiums. And of course, we're dealing with that in item number 6 as a result of joint and several liability, as well as skyrocketing or escalating cyber insurance premiums. And so no doubt we are somewhat in the same boat. Because item number 6, I'm advising this committee of our renewal information received for 2022. Our 2022 entire program would be $703,467,000, which represents an increase of 11% or $70,908 over the 2021 period. Our broker, certainly with the dealing with all of their municipal clients, is, really like last year, commenting that renewal rates are coming in sort of in the 15 to 20% range. And I'm sure that you're experiencing these types of renewals at your own municipality. And so we were able to negotiate for the County of Renfrew an 11% overall renewal for 22. The driving factors were an increase of 10% on liability, which is exactly what we budgeted or estimated as we developed the 2022 budget. 4% on auto rates. What we didn't budget was a 12% increase on our property rates. And of course, that has nothing to do with any losses the county of Renfrew is experiencing. However, you will be aware of almost constant coverage in the media about fires, about floods, about certainly some environmental issues that have caused some dramatic property losses for these companies across the country. And because of the nature of the insurance business, those insurance companies do not take those losses, but rather redistribute those losses to all of their customers in the subsequent years in the form of renewal increases. And so that's what we're looking at today. I can let you know that we budgeted 3% as our estimate on property. It came in at 12. That difference is about $15,660 per year. That is not covered in our 2022 budget. So that's a bit of a pressure to us. In addition, you'll see a pretty significant increase in our cyber insurance coverage. Again, lots of media coverage about what's taking place from cyber attacks and malware and efforts that all organizations are having to put in place to sort of protect our organizations against these types of attacks. And of course, we have a program that will provide us some coverage. We were able to maintain that program. Some municipalities have lost their cyber insurance coverage. We maintained it. It was about a $26,000 a year program. The rates are 45% increased, or $12,800. So that was a bit of a surprise for us, but not really, knowing what's been going on in the industry with respect to cyber insurance. In order for us to maintain our program for 2022, we will have to make some changes to our information technology infrastructure. One of the items in the IT budget is a dual authentication process for us to be able to log into our networks as users. Some of these things are mandatory and are a requirement for us to be able to maintain cyber insurance coverage. So those are some things that we'll attempt to put in place in 2022 to mitigate any further pressure on these insurance programs in the future. Item 4 is really a notice that we received on December the 15th from the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. Their charges to the County of Renfrew for 2022 will be $1,541,699 compared to 2021 of $1,546,566. It's a slight decrease of 0.31%. We also attached as Appendix 4 their latest newsletter providing some additional information on their activities. And item number 8, from the Renfrew County and District Health Unit, a letter was received on December the 14th, indicating that our levy requirement as an obligated municipality will remain unchanged in 2022 from its 2021 level of $1,733,289, and we must make these payments in 12 equal monthly installments due on the 1st of each month. Madam Chair, that's the end of the information. Perhaps we should stop there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. CRA mileage rates. Jeff, don't let me forget, for the Ontario Winter Games, for those people that are claiming mileage, I have to change that form. Don't let me forget about that, okay? Thank you. Number 2, the letter from Prince Edward County. Certainly something to take to our local tiers. Number 3, POA. Number 4, the POA administration backlog. Number 5, the letter from the County of Hastings. Number 6, our 2022 insurance rates. Number 7, the MPAC letter. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Jeff. Jeff, we've been dealing a little bit with MPAC, and this isn't so much concerning the rate as the review that they're will be doing before the new assessments go out. And as a municipality, we're trying to get a feel for, are they doing a review of all properties? Because certainly housing has increased tremendously. And unless they look, which will not be a problem as long as all properties are reassessed, a person's tax levy should not go up. But if they do not do a good job and reassess all properties, I think we're in for a big surprise. So I'm wondering, they're assuring us that they are doing this, but I don't personally have the confidence. And we did ask if we would be able to get, some kind of a printout to show what they've done to date, but we were not successful in getting that, just so we could spot it and come back to them where we would see problems. I'm wondering, because the county does pay their wages and so on, that if other people share this concern, if we should be approaching this from a county standpoint.
Very interesting, Brian. I get where you're coming from. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
Well, Councillor Hunt is bang on. Of course, the imbalance happens if let's just take residential class as an example. And if, of course, the reassessment is a market-based reassessment, has nothing to do with physical changes to properties. So building permits, and I've added a garage, and I've, done whatever to my property. This is strictly a market-based reassessment. So we're currently operating off of the last reassessment date of January 1, 2016. We were to, at the 4-year cycle, begin with another reassessment, market values as of January 1, 2020, but this whole process has been deferred by the ministry, and a date for that reassessment cycle has not been provided as yet. And as Councillor Hunt indicated, when we look at, for example, a residential class, we all know that in Renfrew County, there has been a significant upward pressure on our market rates for real estate. Whatever number we're going to use, let's say it's 30%, values that have increased since 2016, maybe it's more than that. But if the entire inventory of properties all increase by 30 or 40% or whatever it's going to be, that's not a problem, because we simply apply our municipal budgets against the new and higher reassessed values. And the only increase anyone should experience is really the municipal budgetary increase. The problem happens if they don't properly do this market-based assessment, or we have some properties that increase at a rate higher than the average. There will be a shift, if you will, or a transfer of an increased property tax burden for those properties that are above the average. So let's say, for example, properties on water in Renfrew County go up by 50% and all the other properties go up by 30%. There is definitely going to be an increase in the property tax burden for those properties that are on water versus the rest of the property group. So that's coming. It's going to be big, I think. It's right across the province. It's going to be significant. However, it's really going to result in shifts, between properties, between classes, and for us, between municipalities. Because if Greater Madawaska sees a CVA market-driven increase of 30%, but Head Clara Mariah, for example, only sees an increase of 10%, there's going to be a shift in the upper tier burden toward Greater Madawaska and away from Head Clara Mariah. So all of these things happen every time we have a new and updated market value assessment. What can we do about it? Well, later in the budget, and I believe I've included it in a report to this committee later in 2021, we are going to engage with a third party, municipal tax equity consultants, and we're going to have them conduct an audit, if you will, of the current assessment roll. And that audit will ensure that, and as you know, I mean, we've got 25,000 residential properties, so they're not going to look at every one, but they're going to do a data analysis of all of those properties and focus in on some anomalies, things that don't look right, or things that have significant changes year over year over year. And really, this audit will clean up our assessment roll before the next big province-wide impact reassessment hits us. So our hope as a group of treasurers, we brought forward this motion from the tax policy working group. Our hope is that our roll is cleaned up and any problems that could exist are cleaned up and rectified prior to the reassessment, so that the reassessment should simply be market-based or market-driven. So we have yet to go through that exercise. That will begin in 2022 if County Council approves it. If this committee approves it today and County Council approves it next week, we'll start our work with MTE in 2022 and work very diligently on cleaning up that role as best as possible. This committee and County Council will have big decisions to make when that next reassessment cycle occurs, because tax policy, every time we have a reassessment, is really important to understand the shifts in the tax burdens between classes and properties and upper and lower tiers. And we do have some levers through our tax policy bylaws to mitigate some of those changes once we analyze them and know what they are. But I don't see this next market-based cycle really kicking in. I think they've already told us that for 22 and 23, don't expect any changes. So it's really 2024 is the earliest that we're going to see a new market-based change. And that's going to be 8 years since the last reassessment cycle. So as Councillor Hunt has pointed out quite rightly, hold on to your hats, because that's going to be a big number that we're going to need to manage and ensure that we don't have big winners and losers within Renfrew County. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it's going to be scary, and I hope this won't price people out of their homes. Anything further for supplementary, Councillor Hunt?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Very happy that you're proceeding with that, or that hopefully we will be. I think one of the key factors, though, is for us to be able to get an early glimpse at what they've come up with, so we can have our comments back, and in time that if there are problems, it can be rectified. And to date, they're unwilling to share that, but perhaps at a county level they will. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on Councillor Donoghue, please?
I tried the space bar there. It does not work. It says it does, but it's lying. With respect to the property assessment, I think it's incumbent upon us to be very careful in advancing, and I'm speaking of your comments, Madam Chair, with respect to the new assessment, possibly pricing people out of their homes. I think it's important to keep in mind that, of course, the property taxes are the tax rate multiplied by the assessment. I absolutely agree that in this gap from the, don't forget that the last assessment was actually 2016, but we didn't begin to roll that into place until, or that wasn't fully implemented and recognized until 2020. So we are, of course, very delayed behind the 8 ball with respect to the new assessments. What I would suggest, however, is that the tax levies are still going to be in all likelihood advancing mostly on the historical pace that they've been advancing on, which may very well mean that we are going to see a substantial decrease in tax rates that are still going to see a substantial increase in tax levy. So I think it's important for perhaps anyone watching, or any of the ratepayers or homeowners, property owners in the county of Renfrew, to recognize that it is that formula of course, your assessment versus the tax rate. Specifically, what Mr. Foss is discussing is the ratios. And I think even there, I would counsel enormous caution, because there's a great deal of work has gone into the ratios as to how the burden is shared. So I think it needs to be approached very carefully to reassess how the burden is shared depending on how the assessment changes. I know certainly the farm taxes increased enormously at the last assessment in 2016. Being a farmer, I can attest to almost across the board on approximately 1,600 acres, I saw my assessments all but double in 2016, yet there was no change in the ratio. So to be approached carefully, but also to provide some certainty to the property owners that just because your assessment might rise dramatically does not necessarily follow that your tax bill will necessarily rise at the same pace.
Thank you for those comments. And sorry, I wasn't trying to scare people. I think that it's almost irresponsible for MPAC to leave it that long, because we know that since COVID, I mean, our property values have increased exponentially. So that's what I was trying to get across. Anything further on 7? Seeing none. Number 8, Board of Health levy. Councillor Donoghue.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair. I just wished to certainly bring forward, at the Board of Health meeting where we were considering the levy request from the obligated municipalities. This occurred in December of 2021. We had seen the chart that showed the history of the funding for public health, not just in Renfrew County District, but of course across the province. And I think that in my estimation, certainly the power of this chart attests to what I think is difficult to perhaps describe as anything other than a capricious and arbitrary approach to funding of public health. You can see, and there seems to be, if there is such a thing as picking perhaps the worst possible time to be considering changing the cost share, it seems like the two biggest changes in the last 23 years have come back to haunt. You'll note in 1998, there was in fact 0% funding provided by the province of Ontario. I should preface these remarks recognizing that the Health Protection and Promotion Act clearly stipulates that public health is a municipal responsibility, but the province of Ontario has continued to provide grants in all years, as you can see, except for 1998, but it is subject to change. But there is no legislative or regulatory requirement for the province to fund public health. So you can see in 98, it was 0%, and then that was changed to 50%. I'll bring to committee's attention that 2003 was a devastating year from a public health perspective. That was the year of both Walkerton and Ebola. And those were significant stressors on public health. And you can see that we returned to the 75-25% cost share by 2007. Likewise, 2019 was the final year of the 75-25% split, and 2020 was the first year. And once again, 2020 was the unleashing of COVID right across the globe. So once again, I think that perhaps if one could pick a worst possible time to be considering changing these funding formulas, it was done twice within the last 25 years. The other thing that I wished to bring forward is certainly 1998 had to have been an incredibly stressful time in developing the budget for all of the obligated municipalities. I'll confine these remarks, of course, to the County of Renfrew, but a $3.7 million contribution was required from the obligated municipalities. I expect that $3.7 million was a dramatically larger share of the municipal budget levies in 98 than it is in 2022. The second thing that I think is very important to bring forward to this committee, we have had the discussion substantively with respect to the funding and the funding increases. And I have, of course, suggested that in each year they have been mitigated, that we really have not seen the substantial impact of that move to a 70-30. But what I wanted to bring to mind particularly, you will see at the start of this millennium, that is 2000, you see a municipal contribution of $1,845,926. You will see the requirement for 2022 being $2,005,193. That is 22 years. In 22 years, the change from 2000 to 2022 is 8.6%. I dare say we would be hard pressed to find any other service provided by the County of Renfrew, and I will attest to public health being a service funded by the County of Renfrew, along with the City of Pembroke and the Township of South Algonquin. But in all of this millennium, we have seen the increased requirement from the obligated municipalities rise by a total of 8.6%. So I would submit that having a significant concern with the increased funding requirements of public health is not really supported by the experience over this entire millennium to date.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we received this chart. The chart we got at Board of Health started in 1992, right, Michael? And we asked them to go a little further back because we thought that all of County Council should see the progression of the funding requirements.
Actually, just to be precise, the Resources Committee in December, prior to this coming forward to the Board of Health, had seen this chart in its entirety. It was a truncated chart that was presented to the Board of Health for consideration, and it was at that meeting that it was highly recommended that this, as a supporting document, it was very important for all of the funding partners, the municipal funding partners, to have this to demonstrate the approach that has been taken, that I'm certainly comfortable referring to as a capricious approach towards the funding and what that impact has been to the municipal levy.
Thank you. All right. Anything further on number 8? All right, then I will turn it back over to you, Jeff, for resolutions.
Number 9 then is a number of letters received from Scott, Rosine, Black, and Locke, audit planning letters for the 2022 campaign. And I'll read the recommendation that the Finance and Administration Committee authorize Chair Murphy to sign a response letter to Scott, Rosine, Black, and Locke on behalf of this committee. The background, of course, is attached as Appendix 6, is a letter dated December the 17th that we received from our external auditors to Chair Murphy, advising in their role as auditors, they wanted to outline their responsibilities as well as their independence as an auditor, talk a little bit about their planned scope and timing of their audit process, and have requested that we respond to a number of questions that were relevant to their audit with respect to our internal control practices. Also referenced as Appendix 1 is a letter confirming their acceptance and understanding of the audit requirements and the objectives in expressing an opinion on financial statements. So we have included as Appendix 7 a draft response from this committee to our external auditors. They are planned to be on site. They begin some preliminary work probably in the month of February already, but will be on site to review working papers and financial statements that we will draft here. All of these things, of course, from a timing point of view, have to be done prior to their arrival on site. So with that, Madam Chair, we have that recommendation.
Wonderful. I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Donahue, second by Councillor Doncaster. Any discussion? All in favor? Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, number 10.
Number 10, we have a number of membership renewals. The first on our list is from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. So the recommendation is that this committee recommends to County Council that the 2022 membership fee to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario in the amount of $9,564.56, including HST, be approved. The background is that this represents an increase of 2.04% over 2021, and we leave that to you for your approval.
Thank you. Can I ask for a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Brose, second by Councillor Peckett. Discussion. We all know how important this this organization is. So, all in favor? Thank you, committee. And off to number 9. Or sorry, 11.
The next item is our participation with the Municipal Employer Pension Centre of Ontario, Mepco. This organization is a nonprofit corporation created by AMO to provide pension expertise and resources to AMO's employer representatives that sit on the OMERS sponsor corporation boards. The plan, of course, is to ensure that our municipal interests are protected and to consider any plan changes that this board may consider and its impacts to municipalities. The rate is unchanged at $5.20 per OMERS employee. Last year we had 566 members, and this year there are 578. So the recommendation is that the Finance and Administration Committee approves for the Treasurer to continue to pay the Municipal Employer Pension Centre of Ontario invoice for 2022 in the amount of $3,428.99, including HST.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Peckett, seconded by, don't be shy, guys. Don't be shy, Councillor Hunt. Excellent. Discussion. All in favor? Thank you, committee. Number 12, FCM.
FCM. So this recommendation that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that the 2022 membership fee to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, or FCM, in the amount of $21,521.42, including HST, be approved. The background is that this represents a 3.46% increase over the 2021 membership fees of $20,800.81.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Hunt, seconded by Councillor Peckett. Discussion. All in favor? Thank you. Number 13, everybody's favorite topic, joint and several liability.
So, Madam Chair, perhaps I jumped to the background because unfortunately I have to read this entire resolution, I suspect. So we have included as Appendix 9 a copy of an email that we received from AMO dated January the 5th entitled A Call to Action. And AMO is once again asking all member municipalities to move this issue back onto the political agenda. Of course, we have an election taking place in this summer of 2022. Similarly, this issue was a political issue for the election during the last cycle. And then the current government indicated their support in the municipal position to remedy some of the issues that are plaguing the municipal insurance policy programs right across the province. Of course, COVID derailed many of the planned activities for the current provincial government. So AMO has a big interest in getting this back on the political agenda and ensuring that the party that forms the next government has a position on this issue to provide us some relief. So with that, Madam Chair, I guess I believe I need to go through this. So speed reading, here we go.
Again.
The recommendation is that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council, whereas in 2018, Premier Ford committed to reviewing the matter of municipal joint and several liability, and whereas this review was conducted in 19 with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and municipalities fully participating, and whereas the results of this review have not been released and municipalities are still awaiting news of how the Attorney General will address this important matter, and whereas AMO submitted in quotes toward a reasonable balance addressing growing municipal liability and insurance costs in October 2019 that provides a refresh on the municipal argument to find a balance to the issues and challenges presented by joint and several, including implementing full proportionate liability and a cap on economic loss awards. Now therefore be it resolved that this committee recommend to County Council that we support the following 7 recommendations within the AMO submission, and they are as follows. 1, the provincial government adopt a model of full proportionate liability to replace joint and several liability. Implement number 2, implement enhancements to the existing limitations period, including the continued applicability of the existing 10-day rule on slip and fall cases, given recent judicial interpretations and whether a 1-year limitation period may be beneficial. Item 3, implement a cap for economic loss awards. Item 4, increase the catastrophic impairment default benefit to $2 million and increase the third-party liability coverage to $2 million in government-regulated automobile insurance plans. Item 5, assess and implement additional measures which would support lower premiums or alternatives to the provision of insurance services by other entities, such as non-profit insurance reciprocals. Item 6, compel the industry to supply all necessary financial evidence, including premiums, claims, and deductible limit changes, which support its and municipal arguments as to the fiscal impact of joint and several liability. And finally, establish a provincial and municipal working group to consider the above and put forward recommendations to the Attorney General. And further, that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Honorable Doug Downey, Attorney General, the Honorable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and to Jamie McGarvey, AMO President. Thank you.
Good job. I just realized I'm going to have to read it at County Council. All right, I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Brose, seconded by Councillor Donahue. Discussion. All in favor? Thank you. And now we will move to number 14, our department's budget. In anticipation of our Monday morning budget meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with your indulgence, I would possibly just share my screen at this point so that we can somewhat focus our discussion on the same page at the same point in time. And if the technology,
I would find that very helpful, just because I'm working off 2 devices. So yes, that would be wonderful.
If the technology worked, Madam Chair, we should have on our screen the summary for Finance and Admin Committee. This would represent or reflect all of the committees that are departments, that are reporting up through to the Finance and Administration Committee. They are members of council, general administration, including finance department, IT, HR, publicity and public relations, agriculture and reforestations, the provincial offences court department, the municipal property assessment corporation invoice to us, which we have reviewed earlier, as well as a department where we collect all of our financial expenditures. We'll also talk a little bit about the county levy and other revenue, other general revenues that come before this particular committee. You'll notice, Madam Chair and members of the committee, that overall, this group of departments is really reflecting a 5.5% change of 22 over 2021. However, it includes that department entitled Financial Expense, where we have a significant number of items that deal with long-term financing of debt arrangements, as well as contributions to our capital reserves. And so if we are to exclude that particular department, which is primarily supporting our long-term plan efforts in capital renewal and debt obligations, then our overall change is 2.7%. It's slightly above council's direction at 2.5%. All of the departments have met their target, as you can see along the right-hand side, except for the Provincial Offences Court. We do have a business plan for this committee to consider with respect to the Provincial Offences Court, and the pressures are directly related to the Ministry of the Attorney General and their intention to transfer the more serious Part 3 offenses and the prosecution of those offenses back to their member municipalities. And if that happens, there is a financial cost to us that we are attempting to provide for within this particular budget. We fully anticipate that in 2022, we may not have a choice but to accept this transfer responsibility, and so the budget therefore provides for that. So if I just move down onto the next page, begin at the top of the page, and that would be members of council. You'll see that overall we have a 2.2% change for members of council. Essentially, the items that I'm proposing that need to change are with respect to salaries for county council. That 1.7 or 1.75, we do have a resolution that the recommended cost of living adjustment for the non-union group be reflected also in the compensation change for all of county council, including the warden, and so we have provided for that. In addition, I would highlight that under salary and ad hoc committee payments for the warden, it looks like the change is 8.4%, but I can assure this committee that the salary provision in this budget is only 1.75%. The remaining change is with respect to the number of ad hoc meetings that the warden participates in. She is, of course, the chair of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. She was last year, and she has been elected once again for the 2022 period. So there's a significant number of additional meetings. So we have a look at our trend based on the fall of 2021 for the number of meetings that she is attending. And so we anticipate to provide for that in the budget document. There is also a slight change in our payroll liability costs for CPP and employer health tax, et cetera. So we have provided $20,000 this year versus 18 last year. And that's just a reflection of our current rates as of October of 2021. Council liability insurance, you can see that we provided $10,000 in the 2022 year. That was reflecting a 10% increase over 2021 actual. And liability, as I mentioned earlier in today's report, our liability premiums did increase by exactly 10%. And so that budget is certainly a reasonable change. I think maybe, Madam Chair, what I might do is just stop at the end of each department and see if there's any questions, but 2.2% for members of council.
Yes, thank you. Oh, and now I can start my video again. Thank you for unsharing, Jeff, because I couldn't see everybody. Any questions on County Council? Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not particular to County Council, but I think perhaps best stated up front as we're contemplating the budget overall. I note that last year, it was not part of the initial report, but it was sent as an addendum, was the Treasurer's report dated November 30th of the preceding year. So that was not part of this, but also in going back to prior budgets as well, between the only budgets that I participated in at the County of Renfrew have been from 2015 through to this year. But in 2015, right through to the 2020 budget, immediately to the right of the variance percent column was a column of the forecast for the preceding year. That is to say, when we contemplated even the 2020 budget, there was provided a forecast year end, even though it was perhaps not entirely precise. The first unaudited financial report we receive on that is in April. But I had found that enormously helpful in getting some idea or notion of how we expected to finish out the year. So at least last year, when we were considering the 2021 budget, that column was absent, but so too was the provision of the November 30th Treasurer's report that had always been part of the January committee reports. As I said, in 2021, it was provided in a supplementary basis as an addendum before the Finance and Administration Committee in January 2021. So I'm wondering if particularly, I think now that we do not send this out to the printers, if those would be made available or could be made available to all of council to consider for the budget workshop, that in fact there be that column of the forecast year end for the 2021 fiscal year. I think that would be substantially helpful, or certainly I had always found that enormously helpful in getting some sense of what the distinction was between budget and actual right up until the most recent year, as opposed to the actuals that are shown. So the question is that possible to facilitate inclusion of that council for the document that will actually be considered at budget workshop?
Jeff, are you there?
Yes. Hi. Hello, Chair. So, of course, today, Thursday, is our Finance and Administration Committee. Tomorrow, Friday, we are emailing to all of County Council the consolidated budget document, the budget workshop document, if you will. I believe the request is, can we add a 2021 forecast to all of the budgets that have been presented and reviewed by committees to date? That forecast column does not exist. I cannot see how we could possibly create a forecast sometime later today and before we email the final document out tomorrow. I don't see that as a possibility. Thank you.
Could we at least get the November 30th, 2021 Treasurer's report? Would that be possible?
I believe that is available. I have to check. We over the Christmas period, we had a number of finance staff who tested positive for COVID and were removed from the workplace for a significant amount of time. But I believe that may be available for council. If it is, Chair, we can certainly attach that to the document that goes out tomorrow.
Well, I think with the absence of that one column, I think at least the November 30th Treasurer's report would provide some clarity of where we might land at the end of the year. Yes, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a follow-up, I think that I agree. I think that at least the provision of the financial report, the Treasurer's report through November 30th provides at least a reasonable capacity to extrapolate from that. I recognize that perhaps there will be some expenditure line items that may be backloaded to the very end of the year, et cetera, that is possible. But the provision of the Treasurer's report for November 30th, I think, would be essential. But the other thing that I now that we are at Finance and Admin, as I said, that column in the budget document at the budget workshop was provided from 2015 right through 2020, and it's now absent for the last 2 years. So what I would, whether it needs to be by resolution or recommendation or direction, is that be reinstated. I don't know where any of my fellow committee members may be on this, or by extension, council itself. But I thought that was incredibly valuable in seeing the most recent experience of actual to budget, and would certainly highly urge that be reinstated as part of the budgeting process, a static budgeting process moving forward.
Sorry about that. You froze up on me. Are you making that motion, Michael? You're on mute. Michael, you're on mute.
I am too. Thank you. Doncaster got in ahead of me today, though. In any event, I would defer, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Morrow. Is that something that you would seek by resolution? It had been a standard part for 8 years. It doesn't seem that it took a resolution for it to have been removed. Does it require a resolution for it to be reinstated?
Oh, you're on mute. Come on, guys. It's been almost 2 years.
I will look to Mr. Foss, as that I do recall some past discussion about it, and I think Councillor Donahue alluded to it. There was some discussion in the past about the accuracy of that information, knowing that many of the items were coming in, and technically the books don't close until we have an audited financial statement. But I will turn to Mr. Foss on that conversation and see if he has to offer.
Thank you, Paul. Through you, Chair. We can certainly add that column to the document. What it really means for staff is that as we meet to develop the budget throughout the fall of, in this example, as we meet to develop the 2022 budget in the fall of 2021, not only do we attempt to put together our 2022 budget, but we would also have to have each department provide for us their forecast for where they're going to come in at the year end of 2021. And as Paul mentioned, I think, we have some departments that perhaps put a whole lot more effort into that process than others. We can certainly add that to their to the work that they need to do each fall to provide that forecast. As we actually are meeting with some in late September or even October, they're working off financial statements that are dated July or August in order to try and forecast where they're going to come in at the end of the year. So there's 4 or 5 months that are missing. So they do their very best to provide some guesses at where they're going to come in at year end. But it really places that responsibility on each director and their management team to use those financial statements from the summer and forecast where they will be at the end of the year. But if this committee wishes for that to be, added to the next cycle, we can certainly ask all of the directors to do that work.
Yes, Paul.
If I may, Chair, then I would seek direction to staff that for the purposes of the 2022 budget discussion, that the financials for November 2021 be provided to committee as a separate report, and that further moving forward, that a column be reinstated that outlines the year-end estimates for the following budget cycle.
Okay, so yes, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. I'm wondering on this because to provide the forecast, there is quite a bit of work goes into it. I'm wondering if the November numbers would be sufficient because it would be a few accounts that we'd be looking for more information, and we could ask for that because it seems like it's a very heavy job. And for myself, I did miss it as Michael suggested in going through the budget, but the November numbers for me would do the job. Thank you.
Thank you, please.
Final comments, Madam Chair. I don't know what the process was. What I have submitted, and feel free, any member of committee to verify, certainly from 2015 through 2020, that column was provided. I don't know how much effort went in. I'm assuming it was the same effort then as would be required today. I would speculate that possibly the November 30th numbers provided, or rather the November 30th Treasurer's report, there was simply, in my estimation, I would suggest that maybe there was an extrapolation of what the final month would be. By now, I think each director would have a knowledge of what are perhaps substantial expenses likely to not be incurred until December. So that's the background. Nothing was ever brought forward to this committee, and I have been on it for the last 2 years when these have not been presented. So I don't know whether there was a discussion at the staff level, whether there was a discussion at senior leadership team on this being a particularly onerous challenge in providing that column. But in response to Mr. Morrow's suggestion, I think certainly my preference or my recommendation would be to split those two. Ultimately, the direction is what seems to be feasible is that the November 30th Treasurer's report be part of the package that will be submitted to Council for the budget workshop deliberations. That being a resolution unto itself. What I then am going to ask Mr. Morrow, and this is not the first time I've encountered this, whether it was this department or any other, there was never a resolution to remove this from the report. So if it is being suggested that a resolution directing that it be included, then I would submit that any changes anticipated to the format for the budgeting should be subject to approval by this committee on a going forward basis. That report, that column was included when we considered the 2020 budget. It was not last year, and it is not this year. That decision was not made by Finance and Administration. So if it didn't need to be made to remove it, I don't know that it necessarily needs to be made to reinsert it. Or the corollary of that is, if it does require a resolution to include it, then it should not be, nothing should be removed unless by resolution at a future Finance and Administration meeting as well.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I thank you for that. And through you to Councillor Donoghue, I'm not sure I would agree with that comment. I believe that the direction and the procedures, now I will, I'm sure you will challenge me on those, but I will go back and review them myself. I believe the direction to staff in the CAO bylaw and other bylaws are that the staff are to prepare the estimates and the budget on an annual basis. And it does not specify the very details of that. Now, I think that what we've suggested today to committee is that there was, at the staff level, there was a discussion with respect to the value, given the amount of effort it takes to provide the details to that. So I think that's the rationale in terms of how valuable and what is the accuracy of that information that we're providing, knowing that we also include the actuals from previous years. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of actuals where we can base a more informed decision when we're looking at the 2022 budget. So it's not to say there's no past information there. In fact, there are a number of years also present in the budget where committee can review the actuals. So knowing that the year is not completed, we have not closed the books on that year, and knowing the amount of effort it takes to compile that information during the budgeting process and the accuracy of that very information we have to work with at that time. I believe that was the rationale for not proceeding that way. So again, those are my comments on that particular matter. Thank you.
I think my concern is, I just want to touch on something that Jeff said. When our senior leadership team are putting together their budgets in September, they're working off August 30th numbers. And so when you're talking, you know, September, October, November, December, I think that there was a discussion at a budget meeting. And Brian, I don't want to throw you in the soup, but I think you were the one that asked about accuracy of some of the forecasts. I'm not sure if it was you or not, but I think it was. But I think at the very least, we need the November 30th Treasurer's Report, at the very least, because I think that we can extrapolate what might occur in December. Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I concur certainly for the purposes of the 22 budgeting, where I will push back somewhat is with respect to how that particular column may have come to be omitted from this. I've heard a lot of, I think this is what happened, and this might have been what happened, and I'm suggesting that this might have happened, but I'm not hearing this is why. And what I would submit is once, certainly my own opinion moving forward, is that once that format had been established and followed for 6 of the last 8 budgets, then it is a substantive change. With respect to Mr. Morrow's comments that there are multiple actuals, I absolutely attest to that. And nowhere here do we get essentially a scorecard that says, how did we match up to budget? Because we are not provided the budgets for any of 2015 through 2020, nor in fact now are we even provided any sort of sense of the how we might finish 2021. The reason I'm bringing this forward is, once again, my go-to is that even on the reserves that are presented in today's budget, you'll note that I haven't scrolled to that page, but I think they are presented at something on the order of $42 million. Well, when we did our budget last year at this time, they were forecast at the end of the year to be 31 million. So we were out by $12 million on 31 million. So I think that I don't want to belabor this anymore, Madam Chair, but I would submit that if there are considerations being given to the format of the information that's going to be provided to council are likely to change, I think it would be highly advisable to bring that forward to the Finance and Administration Committee any time when that might be contemplated. And I'm all but certain that that did not in this instance.
Okay, we do need to move this along because we also have a closed session and we haven't gotten through our entire department budget. So, Councillor Donahue, are you making a motion to reinstate that column?
Or so what I would like to do is separate, as I said at the outset, that there be 2 resolutions, each of which are precisely as Mr. Morrow recommended, but separating them into 2 as opposed to 1, so that for the 2022 budget, that a November 30th, 2021 Treasurer's Report be provided as part of the budget documents for budget workshop, and as a separate
hang on. So good. Okay, good recommendation. Do you have a seconder? Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Hunt. All right, all in favor of that? Because that's a simple one. Let's get the November 30th Treasurer's Report out, and then we'll okay. Now, yes, Councillor Doncaster. No. Sorry, I'm freezing up, guys. My apologies. All right. And now, Councillor Donahue, your second resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that staff be directed for the Council's consideration for the 2023 budget, that the spreadsheet be restored to include a forecast year end of the immediate preceding fiscal year.
Excellent, thank you. All right, do you have a seconder? All right, you don't have a seconder. So that is defeated. Unless, are you guys all frozen or is it just me? Okay. So that is defeated. And now, so what I'd like to do is turn this back over to Mr. Foss to continue on with the budget.
Hello again, Madam Chair. So I believe we stopped at the end of members of council at 2.4%. At the bottom of the page, we've included for you the General Administration Department at 1.4%. There is a couple of items that are worthwhile highlighting. Under salaries, you'll see that there's a significant increase in salaries in the 2021 budget year. We had advised this committee of a staffing transfer, if you will. Within our emergency services department, there was a administrative clerk, or I think the title was a finance clerk, working within the EMS department with sort of the expansion of paramedic responsibilities into long-term care and some of the other programs. That staff member was reassigned. And so we added a clerk position in 2021 to the finance department to cover all of those former responsibilities of the paramedic services finance clerk. In 2022, so in this year, and part of the increase in that budget is we have likewise had a transfer from the Renfrew County Housing Corporation. And when committee reviewed that budget yesterday, there was a discussion about a change that has taken place in the delivery of all of those former responsibilities by the finance clerk within the housing corporation. That position was eliminated and those responsibilities were all transferred into the finance department. And so you'll see that there is an increase here in salaries, but there's also a commensurate increase that's taking place with recoveries from other departments. And of course, those salaries are offset 100%. So in our charges that are going back to our other departments, 100% of the cost of the housing clerk is being charged back to the housing corporation, and 100% of the cost of the finance clerk for paramedic services is being charged back through to the paramedic services department. So essentially it's a change in reporting relationships, who those employees work for, what department that they are seated in, that daily organizational direction, advice, guidance. We've now kind of consolidated those within corporate services, and so that's really the change. So from a dollar perspective, the increase in salaries and benefits for those two positions have been translated into being charges back to those departments. So on Wednesday, Health Committee reviewed paramedic services, and this was reviewed with them. Also on Wednesday afternoon, Community Services reviewed the transfer of the housing clerk position. So overall, 1.4% is the change for general administration. Maybe, Madam Chair, I'll just stop there to see if there are any questions.
Yes, so any questions on general admin? I see, oh, sorry, Councillor Doncaster.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious, so in 2021, let me get the years straight. The last 2 years have disappeared on me. So we're talking about that administrative function that transferred from paramedics to corporate services. And now we're looking at the addition of administrative position in the paramedic service. In this budget year, we're looking at transferring administrative functions from the Renfrew County Housing Corporation. And sorry for the tone of this question, but are we going to get a request to add an administrative function to Renfrew County Housing Corporation next year?
Yes, Paul, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Councillor Doncaster and committee. With respect to the addition of positions from both housing and paramedic services, those two positions that are being shifted to the finance and admin department are very technical bookkeeping types of positions where it's been extremely important for us to bring those into the finance department. So we have a different level of oversight, creating more consistency in how we administer and provide oversight to those services. In the request that you see from emergency services in their business case, that is a much higher level position where that as a commander type role as positioned to that allows for that commander to focus on things like transfer payment agreements, conversations with finance and HR about interpretation of collective agreements and how they will be managed corporately. So much different situation. To get to the point of your request, the answer is I do not foresee a position being requested in the management level for housing. In fact, you will also see in Laura's position where we eliminated a housing supervisor position as well. So we have been finding those efficiencies in those budgets. This is just a bit of a shift in how we're delivering our day-to-day finance. We think it's better, more efficient, provides for continuity, and also provides for more consistency in how we're doing our bookkeeping in those departments. So I will leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Excellent. Anything further on general? Oh, Councillor Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious on this. Mr. Foss did a fantastic job, and we certainly engaged in this at Health yesterday with the movement of some people. So I understand why it's increased. I would have anticipated that salaries and benefits would have kind of moved in lockstep, but they seem substantially different, with salaries increasing 6% and benefits increasing 13%. I wonder if Mr. Foss can just shed some light on that.
Have Jeff with us. There we go.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Chair, could you just repeat the question so I can kind of have a look at the line item that we're talking about?
Michael was just wondering why salaries increased 6%, but benefits increased 13%. See, I really do pay attention to you, Michael.
I did not doubt it, Madam Chair.
What's that?
Just going into the staffing budgets here for a moment, just to have a look at what the changes are.
Pause for station identification.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I can't really get into that worksheet at this point in time. Of course, the salary change is not simply the addition of the one new position that's transferring in from Housing Corporation. It also reflects a 1.75% change in COLA applied to all of those other positions, plus anybody that's moving along the grid. We also have a change in salary for our receptionist position. So last year, we had a change in our receptionist position. So we reflected that in our salary. At this point in time, we actually have an accommodation currently in our receptionist position, and so that's kind of reflected in that change. The only other thing that I see that's happening with salaries, of course, is the what we brought forward with respect to our Manulife benefit premium changes. So we had a fairly significant increase in all of our Manulife benefits that came forward to this committee in November, I believe. I think the Manulife premium changes were 19% year over year. That's not the total cost of the benefit package. That's only a portion thereof. So it would make sense to me that the changes in the benefit rate would be higher than the changes in the salary, even given those items in salary that I previously reviewed. 1.75% for COLA, 2 positions coming along the grid, a change in our receptionist position. Yeah, those are all the things I can think of, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anything further on general? All right, let's move it along. Jeff? There we go.
So, Madam Chair, if the technology is still working, I believe we're at information technology at 1.5%. The biggest change that we're really just reflecting for you today is $35,000 being reflected in this budget for a special project. That in information technology is part 2 really of the work that the Perry Group is doing. Council will recall that we applied for funding under the Municipal Modernization Program intake number 2 for a digital strategy, and we did receive $75,000 in funding. So a portion of that work has been ongoing throughout the fall of 2021, and we've received progress billings to that effect. So that project is expected to be completed by March or April of this year. And so part B, or the 2022 work, still needs to be done, but it's really that special project is offset by the provincial modernization money coming through.
Excellent. Are there any questions on IT? Just shout them out. I see no one. All right. HR.
Within the HR department, we're reflecting 2.5%, sort of the maximum change in the HR department. That's really looking at about $6,000 in total. There are some big changes, obviously, that are taking place within the HR department. Primarily, you'll see in the area of salaries. So we have 2 positions that have been added into this salary component. So we did, similar to the finance department, we did transfer the individual who was working within the paramedic service division as a human resource specialist, and we've transferred that position into the HR department within corporate services in order to consolidate all of our HR expertise within one department and leverage those efficiencies throughout the organization. And in addition to that, we had a business plan in February of 2021 where council approved the hiring of 1 additional human resource coordinator to be used to support HR needs throughout our 17 municipalities. You'll see that we have a line item called Recovery Municipal, and that has increased fairly dramatically over the last year. And that reflects our intentions to use that position on a cost recovery basis to support our member municipalities. Very pleased to report to you that, of course, this council is aware of requests by the town of Renfrew through Councillor Emo to be able to support a significant amount of work within the town of Renfrew from an HR perspective. We developed a service level agreement. We provided that to the town of Renfrew. And this week, the Director of Corporate Services for the town of Renfrew brought forward that proposal to the town of Renfrew. And as I understand it, council has approved the service level agreement with the county of Renfrew. And so that I suspect by next week, we will meet with representatives from Renfrew and begin a work plan for us to support their activities. The service level agreement outlines at least 3 days a week where we will be working with the town, either virtually or in person in the town office. So we're very excited as an organization to move forward with that activity. And so that is reflected not only within the increased salary for that position, but within the increased revenues that we anticipate recovering from the town primarily, and then from the other any other work that we're assisting the other 16 municipalities in moving forward. One of the line items that I do want to draw your attention to is legal fees, and you'll see that we are budgeting $14,500 versus $60,000 in the 2021 period. And of course, we set the budget fairly high in 2021 as we restructured that department and began to hire staff and bring them on board. We knew full well that we had 6 collective agreements that had all expired with our 6 bargaining units. And so we entered into agreements with legal services with Eamon Harnden as well as Hicks Morley to support our organization with assistance with bargaining and with a variety of HR issues until we had staff in place that could deliver those services directly. So this budget really reflects a reduction or a moving away from that reliance on our third-party legal services and a move towards supporting our organizations directly. Obviously, we will still require from time to time legal opinions, and we don't have an in-house solicitor to do that. And so we are providing a budget to enable us to continue moving forward. But the big part of the work was done in 2021. There is still the QP agreement with Paramedic Services that is ongoing. There were some meetings in January, as a matter of fact. And so that is the last collective agreement that we need to resolve. And so that work is ongoing. But our target is right to the maximum of 2.5%. There's lots of work that needs to be done within the HR department. And as I said, we're really looking forward to our engagement with local municipalities to support them with HR services. Thank you. Oh,
Excellent. Thank you. Questions? I see none. Let's move ahead.
thank you, Madam Chair. No changes in the budget for publicity or public relations. Likewise, no changes in agriculture and reforestation. As I mentioned, we do have some significant pressure within our provincial offences court department. And with that, I would like to, if I can find it here on this report, move to the business case for provincial offences court. Excellent. So the business case really just highlights the fact that we do have some significant workload pressures that will come our way with respect to the transfer of Part 3 prosecution services from the Crown's office to our own local prosecution services. The ministry has committed that they will continue to prosecute certain Part 3 POA cases, including those where a criminal charge is also laid, charges involving the Ontario Sex Offender Registry and young persons, and a review of all POA fatalities will be really conducted on a case-by-case basis by the Crown Attorney to determine who's actually going to deal with those particular matters. But the bulk of the rest of the Part 3 prosecution services will really be handled by our contracted staff. This committee will remember that we moved away from a model where we had 2 part-time prosecutors working as County of Renfrew employees a number of years ago, and we have contracted services currently for Part 1 offenses by 2 organizations, one specifically to deal with our bilingual courts and the other to handle the bulk of our prosecution responsibilities. So both of those prosecutors are qualified to participate in prosecuting Part 3 matters. So those contracts, when the time comes, can be amended to include the prosecution of Part 3 services. But this particular business case deals with our disclosure clerk. I've made a note in this business case to suggest that it's only about a third of our current court cases are with respect to our Part 1 matters. Part 1 matters, typically, because they are less severe charges, consist of only a few pages of disclosure information for each one of the matters coming forward to court. But for Part 3 matters, which are more complicated, we've got 20 or 25 pages worth of disclosure information that has to be assembled, coordinated, and dispersed to all the relevant parties. So the workload will change dramatically if this particular situation takes place. Oh, my apologies. Just want to get back up to the Provincial Offences Court. So when we look at the budget, the increase of $49,000 that's taking place, we have an increase in our salary area that we anticipate. We also have an increase in benefits because this part-time employee our proposal is be working on a full-time basis in this department. We have some savings in our prosecution of Part 3, where we had been paying the Crown $109 an hour for them to prosecute, but the Crown never charged us for their office time or their preparation work leading up to the actual courtroom activities. It was only, they would only charge us for the actual courtroom time. So we will save $16,000 in their courtroom time, but we anticipate an increase of about $31,000 in our own third-party prosecution, because we also have to include sufficient time, office time, if you will, for them to prepare to prosecute these cases in the courtroom itself. So yeah, certainly a savings on the one department, as I said, or one line item of about $16,000, $16,500, but a $31,000 increase in prosecution. That's $14,500. The combination of salary and benefit for our disclosure clerk is another $36,000. That, Madam Chair and members of the committee, is almost the entirety of the pressure that's being placed upon the Provincial Offences Court Department. I can tell you that we are a member of the Municipal Court Managers Association, and all municipal court managers are anticipating this type of financial pressure on their POA departments and POA courts. We are collectively pushing back against the province firmly because they are asking us to enter into a new and revised memorandum of understanding, which lays out the responsibilities of both parties, and no court is eager to amend that agreement or sign that agreement without dealing with some of these financial matters. And so I am preparing for sort of the worst case scenario in our 2022 budget. We may get some relief when we go to sign this upcoming memorandum of understanding. We are working, as I said, very, very closely with our association to ensure that municipal interests are well represented right across the province of Ontario. I don't believe that we're going to be able to stop this transfer. This is, of course, a senior level of government that's making the rules, but we may have some flexibility in what the costs may be. But this will cost us some money, and I am providing that information to this committee today.
Thank you. All right. Perfect. Thanks for sharing. Okay. Any questions on POA? I see none. And I think that was an excellent business case. Thank you for providing that. Jeff, is that your last line item?
Madam Chair, I do still need to review the financial expense area, and we should at least talk about what's happening with the county levy, but just about done.
Excellent. Sorry, I had to shut down my iPad because I just kept going frozen.
So the last two expenditure budgets are really just Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. Today, we overviewed the slight decrease of $3,800. We reflected that in the budget. Financial expenses are reflected here. The line item that I talked to you earlier, this $22,000 for our engagement, as recommended by Tax Policy Working Group, our engagement with municipal tax equity consultants to conduct this assessment-based review, if you will. So we have a quote from them of $22,000. It also includes some training for all of your local treasurers to ensure that they are adequately prepared for some of the challenges that will come forward through the appeal process once that next assessment cycle happens. We continue to provide $300,000 for our share of tax write-offs in the 2022 year, $200,000, $198, $178, $322 in 2017. So we've left that budget unchanged. We continue to provide for $300,000 in a provision for unallocated funds. We have principal and interest payments for a number of debentures that we've entered into with Infrastructure Ontario. We do have also our transfer to the TCA renewal reserve. I'll talk a little bit about how that's calculated when I get down to the revenue section. Likewise, we made that change a couple of years ago about ensuring that all of the public works capital projects are all financed through reserves. Well, we continue simply to put money into that public works reserve at whatever the COLA adjustment is approved by council. So we've done that. This is pretty significant here for council to be aware of. You'll notice that last year we began the repayment of our SDIP plan, Service Delivery Improvement Project, and the capital renovation cost on this building to close those 5 offices and move everyone in. Last year was a part year. Of course, we moved in partway through the year. And so our original business plan indicated to council that we would see savings of $169,000 in the first year. But this 2022 is the first full year where we can realize all of our savings with respect to that plan. So there is the $466,000 savings from all of the departments that are participating in that. And this amount is being transferred back into the TCA renewal reserve. That's where we're borrowing the money in order to do the capital reconstruction. When we get to the budget workshop on Monday, I will have a number of slides just reminding council where those savings came from and the payback period for this particular program. But this is where it's seen in the budget, the savings in each one of the impacted departments, but the transfer back to reserve is all being done in this one line item, so council can easily keep track of what we committed to you in the budget or the business plan and the actual repayment of these reserves. Of note, you'll see this item at the bottom of the page. A number of years ago, we entered into some renovation work on Centennial Lake Bridge. We decided that we would self-finance that through the tax levy over I'm going to say it was an 8 or 9 year period. I can't really recall, but this is the final year. So there's $218,000 at year end that was unfinanced. And so we will complete that financing in the 2022 period. And so we've reflected that here in the budget as well. As I mentioned, just wanted to talk to you about our transfer of the TCA renewal reserve. We did receive in December some updates from MPAC on growth information in Renfrew County in 2021. And I'm happy to report that growth has rebounded somewhat to 1.65% across the county from the last number of years where we were kind of bouncing around the 1.1% area. That growth at 1.65%, of course, in our long-term financial plan is all dedicated to going back into our TCA renewal reserve. So there is an extra $807,602. That's what the growth is worth. And that is going back into our capital renewal plan and that capital renewal reserve in the 2022 budget. So happy to report that. Of course, this total county levy is changing by 4.15%. It's made up of the 2.5% target the council provided direction on in the fall, as well as the 1.65% growth. And so that, of course, is dedicated to our renewal reserve. The only other item that we're really changing here is our interest revenue. We're reflecting in 2022 our expected experience in 2021, seeing interest revenues being somewhat lower than they were in the 2020 period. And of course, we are at historic lows on all of our renewals, and we use a laddered GIC investment approach. And those renewals are certainly as low as we've ever seen them. This committee and county council received a recommendation for us to open an account with one investment so that we could look at investment alternatives. And so as these laddered GIC principal amounts renew, we will bring before committee sometime in 2022 some opportunities for us to invest in some other investment opportunities that potentially have the potential to have a higher yield than we're experiencing in the GIC marketplace. And with that, Madam Chair, perhaps I just stop sharing my screen.
Yes, please. Okay, so were there any questions on the remainder of Jeff's report? Then Jeff, could you read the recommendation, please?
Oh, I certainly can't. Just have to get back to that particular page. So the recommendation is that the Finance Administration Committee recommends that the draft 2022 budgets for all of the divisions reporting to this committee be approved and forwarded to the January 17th County Council Budget Workshop for approval. Thank you.
Can I ask for a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Brose, seconded by Councillor Hunt. Any more discussion? All in favor? Thank you, committee, and the report as a whole. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Donahue, seconded by Councillor Hunt. Anything further? All in favor? Excellent. All right, is there any new business? I see none. So at this time, I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to go into a closed meeting pursuant to Section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended for the purpose of litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, Renfrew County Place lease. Can I get a mover and seconder? Oh, thank you, Connie. Yes. Councillor Hunt, second by Councillor Donahue. All in favor? All right, and we are now in closed. Can I just Thank you. All right. Well, the date of our next meeting is Thursday, February 10th. But of course, we do have budget workshop starting on Monday. So I will see you all on Monday. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn, please. Nobody wants to go? Oh, Councillor Bros does. Okay. And Councillor Doncaster. All right. All in favor. Thanks, guys. Great day today, except sad for the warden, but great day. And I'll see you all on Monday or this afternoon.